समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या? समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme related documents carefully.
People in Calcutta, especially well-educated, upper middle class types, often ask me why people in the rest of India, liberals in particular, are, according to them, taken in by Mamata Banerjee. Do we not know what's happening in Calcutta? They say, you guys can say what you like from Bombay or from Delhi, but we live in Calcutta. We have to live with the Trinamool Congress. We have to live with the fact that she panders to minorities. We have to live with the fact that in many of the districts, Trinamool workers are no more than hoodlums. And what about the scandals, RG Kaur, many others are mentioned? Why do you guys not understand this? Why do you keep singing the praises of Mamata? I thought of this last week when Mamata appeared in the Supreme Court. I think probably the first sitting chief minister to do that, to argue against the Election Commission. And I knew that nothing much would happen in legal terms, though it was very, very important symbolically. But it struck me that of all the chief ministers I have seen, only Mamata could have done this. In a way, it's what you would expect of her, odd as that might seem. I haven't met her for years. But when I lived in Calcutta in the 1990s, mostly and partly in the 1980s, I used to watch her and I used to admire her. Now, we've forgotten what Calcutta was like in those days. It had been ruled for years by the CPM, the Communist Party of India, Marxist, and it was ruled essentially by a Politburo headed by Jyoti Basu. Now, outside, I suppose people in Calcutta would have said that in those days, outside of Calcutta, all of us bought into the legend of Jyoti Basu as this great leader. But in Calcutta, we saw him somewhat differently. The government he ran was incompetent, inept. It did lasting damage to Bengal because they drove out all the industry. They encouraged trade unionism beyond a point. They created a situation where Bengal was condemned to backwardness because nobody would invest in Bengal. And yet, it was more than just that. It was that you talk about hoodlums now. In those days, the hoodlums included the police. Anybody who opposed the CPM was, in a sense, taking their lives in their own hands. I used to work in those days for a newspaper group, the largest newspaper group in Bengal, called the ABP Group. And there was a very damaging strike organized mainly by CPM supporters because the ABP would not support Jyoti Basu or buy in to the legend of what the CPM was doing. It was so violent that employees of ABP were beaten up in front of the police, and the police turned their way. They pretended nothing was happening. So none of us ever bought into this legend. But we looked for somebody who would oppose them, who would in a way indicate that Bengal could be back on the path to progress. There was really nobody. The Congress in those days was flabby, useless. Well, probably not much changed in Bengal from those days. Its leaders used to fight with each other. They did a really bad job of opposing the CPM. Many of them were clearly in bed with the CPM. The only person who actually spoke up against the CPM, and it required real courage to do that in those days, was Mamata. She went out in the streets, she led protests, she wasn't intimidated by any of these people, and yet the Congress never really supported her. They wanted to knock her down. And the opposition that she had from within the government and from the state machinery was incredible. Every time she went on a demonstration, the police would cordon it off. When that didn't work, they would assault her workers. When that didn't work, they'd assault her. There are pictures, everybody who lived in Calcutta in those days have seen, of policemen assaulting Mamata personally. Big guys in helmets and uniforms with weapons. One single little woman in a sari. Nobody thought this was unusual. She was beaten up so much and suffered so much. In those days, I used to see her sometimes at the ABP office. And she used to come in, bones broken, carrying bandages all over her body, struggling to walk. But she never ever gave up because she said she would defeat Jyoti Basu, she would banish the CPM from West Bengal. I thought this was admirable. You didn't necessarily have to agree with everything she stood for, but that somebody had the courage to do this in those days with that kind of repressive regime was, I thought, an enormous achievement. Even then, people who didn't like Jyoti Basu didn't agree with me. A lot of the objections to her were based purely on classism. In Bengal terms, Jyoti Basu was the sort of chap they admire. He was a barrister. He'd been English educated, not quite Oxbridge, but London, which was sort of close enough. He spoke like a gentleman, as they would say in Calcutta. He used to sip 8 scotches in the evening, receive visitors, and he would do all this from the comfort of his home, while outside his police were beating up workers, hoodlums were roaming the streets. But to many upper middle class people in Bengal, that was fine. Jyoti Basu was somebody you could look up to. Mamata, they said, wears rubber chappals. She lives in a very humble location. She can't even speak proper English. She just wasn't one of them. And so her courage and her ability to stand up against the CPM was completely ignored. And without this kind of opposition, the CPM ran wild. I mean, in theory, it was the Communist Party of India, and the reason it had thrown out industry was because it was fighting for the workers. But the reality, as we all knew, was that there was just so much corruption within the CPM, so much corruption in the government, that journalists used to refer to them as the Communist Party of India Marwadi, not Communist Party of India Marxist, because they were kept in business by the small Marwadi business community that needed the government on its side. I know this sounds parochial, but in the 80s and the 90s, the Marwadis were the only people who had money in Calcutta. They knew how to play the CPM, and the CPM knew how to play them. In the process, the people of Bengal suffered. Bengal slipped further and further down the development scale. There were power cuts, the phones wouldn't work, the roads were a mess. But nobody really noticed because they admired Jyoti Basu, who was such a great gentleman. And Mamata, I mean, she was not worthy of opposing this great man. I saw the reactions to her Supreme Court appearance. And the attitude there has been, why is she bothering to do it? Who is she to address the Supreme Court? It's still that same classist objection to a woman who comes out of nowhere and who fights for right in a way, who fights against authoritarianism. And I've tried to explain this to people in Calcutta that what she is doing now on a much larger scale is not unlike what she did in Calcutta in the 80s and the 90s. I do not dispute that there are problems with her government. I do not dispute that she can be mercurial. I do not dispute that there is corruption among some of her ministers. That's all of that. I think I'll happily take on board. But there's something we sometimes forget, and that's the wider context. We need to admit that liberalism in India is in decline. Liberals have essentially given up the battle. When Narendra Modi was elected, they said he'll be in one term, he'll be in office, he'll end after that, he won't make much difference to the basic structure of India, it's just an aberration. They were wrong. Modi now looks set almost to go on forever, according to liberals. They have accepted that he is a force of nature, that nobody can really fight him or fight him successfully. The national opposition certainly doesn't seem to be able to do it because Modi doesn't seem at all worried by what they do. He goes on anyhow. Secularism, which was once the glue that held India together, has essentially been finished. No? The position of most liberals today, Hinduism is the main thing and India is a Hindu country, but we shouldn't mistreat Muslims, which is a great retreat from the secularism of the 1990s. The authoritarianism you see in the government, the stifling of dissent, I don't think they mind that any longer. There is such a defeatist consensus among the Indian liberal community that people are happy to just do whatever little they can get away with. The importance of Mamata Banerjee for liberals really is that she fights against this defeatist consensus. She fights even though people say she has no hope, because she's by nature a fighter. Whether it means going out of the streets, whether it means challenging the most powerful people, whether it's Jyoti Basu or Narendra Modi or anybody, it is in her blood to fight. It's, I think, an admirable quality in these days, because somebody needs to challenge the non-liberal consensus. Somebody needs to bring liberals out of this negative, defeatist mindset and needs to show them that yes, you can stand up for the values this country was founded on, and you won't necessarily lose. I mean, the great thing about Mamata, unlike most of the opposition, is while the BJP has thrown everything it can at Mamata, she's won. Election after election, the political pundits tell us she's finished. Pollsters, even after exit polls, tell us she's lost, the BJP is coming to power, and she wins. The last time when there was an assembly election and the polls had said it was close or that Mamata would lose, she won by a landslide, which nobody was willing to accept would happen. So obviously she's touched some chord in Bengali people, even if she hasn't necessarily won the approval of the upper middle classes with their high standards of what constitutes bhadralok behavior or gentlemanly behavior or whatever. These are qualities that are worth admiring in a situation where there is one party dominance, in a situation where liberalism is dead, where secularism is dying. Somebody gets up there, somebody may go to the Supreme Court and nothing may come of it, but somebody stands on the streets and says, you can't intimidate us. We're going to fight for what we believe in. And indeed, if you go to West Bengal, secularism, which is dead everywhere else in the country, thrives, it survives. It's the reigning philosophy in West Bengal. Nobody disputes it. And every time the BJP tries to dispute it, the BJP loses. These are achievements that I think the people in Bengal don't realize are enormous. That is why liberals outside of Bengal have so much respect for Mamata Banerjee. Not because she is necessarily the best administrator or the most even-tempered person, but at a time when everyone else is frightened, she has the guts to fight.